You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Marie Garvey. Biggest mistakes women are making in their careers.
Ladies, oh my gosh. If you are a good girl, if you say yes, you're the go-to girl. If you are burned out, if you're overwhelmed, well, besides taking a nap or having a cup of tea, you should listen to this episode because I have an amazing guest today, Marie Garvey. She is a trailblazer, entrepreneur, motivational speaker. She's a life and executive coach. She's made it a friend and former client of mine who I love. And she's made it her mission as part of my ripple effect. I love when this happens. And now she's helping women break free from the constraints of their busy, hellish lives that they can't wait until the weekend or that vacation to stop that shit and unlock their true potential and finding joyful success in work and life. And you are creating, Marie, the Good Girl Rebellion, which we're going to hear about. Yes. A movement that empowers women to find success and teaches them how to own their own voice and their power and be the go-to person for the right reasons, which just sounds amazing. So when I met you, you were like one of the busiest people I've ever met. You were very good at it. So like in all of the journey, your journey, what landed you on like, these are the women that I need to help? Like what was your own story like? Because you're just so incredibly courageous that you completely changed and transformed your life.
Yeah, well, with your help, I completely transformed and changed my life. I think that for me, I was my first client. I really was single mom in crisis communications and felt like I had to live the life I was living. I created this mess, burning the candle at both ends. Now it was my job just to make peace with it. And I just figured, that's not okay anymore. And I just got to the place where, surviving or struggling and getting through wasn't going to be enough for me. And I went out and found the answers. And once I figured out the answers, I was literally walking on the beach and this like little voice went in my head, like, now that you've figured out, you've got to go teach other women to do this. And I at the time I was like, you got to be kidding me. I already have a business. I don't want to start another business.
Right.
But then every woman I know is compromising in ways that they think they have to and they don't. And, we're just wired differently as women. And we've learned really, good girl, as I call it, programming from a very young age that's still got a strong hold on us and is really, getting in the way of true happiness and potential and presence and, getting comfortable with power because women have a very uncomfortable relationship with being powerful and really trying to break down that programming and stand in who they are today versus, all the stuff people have defined them as.
Oh, I love this. Well, so I want to talk about good girl, first of all. It's funny because I think about how as women, and I can't speak for men because I'm not one, but I think as women, it's like we have this orientation of like, I love that you say the good girl. And it's almost like we're striving for the pat on the head and the cookie. And like, whether it's don't fight with your brother, only speak when you're spoken to, get good grades, get to the right college, get to the right, it's just this whole thing. And I want you to talk about, because not only are you completely just chasing like the goal post that just keeps moving further and further away, but if you are operating like, looking for cookies and pats on the head, and then that doesn't happen, like what's the long-term trajectory of like, once you stop getting trophies, in fifth grade, and you have to deal with loss and struggle, like what happens to the good girl?
They double down. And that's what's so dangerous. They double down. I just have to work harder. I just have to do more. I just have to continue to please. And if I do enough, then I will be enough, And that's really what happens, because we've been told don't be too much. And, we're about walking around being pleasers and perfectionists all the time. And then humble, you've got to be humble. Don't boast and be arrogant. And we're just ripped the joy out of any accomplishment we make. And we're putting our worth and our value and whether we're good at our jobs or not in other people's hands. Like, tell me I'm good, tell me I'm valuable, tell me I'm doing enough, instead of knowing that already and then like going out there and slaying it.
Rick, when you were talking about that, it reminds me of the speech in the Barbie movie, right?
Exactly right. When I saw that movie, I was like, preach, I've been doing this for like 4 years now, and now it's a blockbuster. And she says in the end, like, I'm tired of watching women, tie themselves in knots to get other people to like them, as if liking you is the goal in life.
Yeah.
Not everybody's, it's like what I say to my daughter who's 14, not everybody's going to like you, honey. Not everybody's going to get you. Your job is to not worry about that and go find your people.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm writing my book, and I was trying to reverse engineer the moment where I had an experience that was like, oh, your job is to make other people happy. And I think I feel like, I'm not sure, I don't know if you have this, but like it's a memory, but like I don't remember all the pieces, but I just remember like the senses of it. And it was this moment, and like my mom and dad arguing about something, like low key argue, because my dad was very sarcastic. And he said this thing to my mom, like, you're the world's biggest waste of talent. Yeah, right? And he was also saying, like, to my mom who smoked cigarettes, and you're killing yourself. It's, I remember him saying, stupid, stupid, stupid. And I was like 10, and I was in the kitchen. I wrote this scene, and in it, I'm eating cornflakes. I don't know why. It was probably like peanut butter crunch. But, and in that moment, I'm like, Mom, don't let Dad talk to you that way. Dad, don't be a jerk, right? Like, I'm like, okay, let me fix this. Like, I will fix it. Like, everybody just get along. You didn't mean that. Don't talk that way to people. And it was like that moment. And I think that we all have like mini moments like that. And we're like, wait, I got to make everyone else happy. And so we're doing this at home and we're doing it at work. How does it manifest because you had your own company, you consulted, you've worked for big corporations. Like, how does this manifest at work? Because I think people just rationalize it and be like, well, this is what you have to do to get promoted or get the job or, be respected by men.
Yeah. Well, it manifests in early on, killing yourself in your 20s to prove that you're the go-to girl, right? And then really like, I'll do it. And thinking we got to earn that right. And, men probably do that in their 20s too. But then they reach this place where they know they're good at their job and they're valued, and they move into transactional mode, right? Like, I'm doing this work, I should get paid this much, where women double down and go further into the pleasing and never let anything go. And oftentimes get rewarded with more work instead of compensation or title, because they're literally telling the world, I want more work. I want to be the go-to person. And they get satisfaction out of it, even though they're pissed off, right? And it's like, why? And it's like, well, you've created this because you've basically not stood up for yourself, and you don't see it as a transaction, and you're looking at, validation from your work versus fighting for your place and standing up for yourself. And they're very uncomfortable with conflict because that good girl's got, I want to be liked. I don't want to be too pushy, all of that stuff. And they don't even know the words. But what happens is, what's frustrating is, they finally get to their breaking point, and then they speak from an emotional place,
right?
Instead of their power, and if they would just handle it in their, their power, or as you would say, your adult self, right? Then they wouldn't be so pissed off all the time and feel like they're taken advantage of. But it's this hold on them that if they give up some piece, that then they're weak, or they're not going to be valued, and they just don't understand that that's not where it's coming from anymore. I'm not sure it ever did, but, there's a shift that happens when people are growing in their career, And women don't make that same transition all the time.
Right. Do you ever watch the morning show?
Yes, I worship it.
I'm watching season 3 right now. Are you watching it?
I haven't seen season 3 yet because I really am worried about it.
I think it just came out. But as you're speaking, I'm really loving it because there's a lot of really strong women in that show, and there's this expectation, like the way that you succeed is you have to be more like a dude, like this. Yeah, what a man would do. There's even a scene where one of the big executives, she's second to the CEO of a whole, a network. She goes to schmooze these ad execs, and they're drinking a shit ton. And she goes up to the bartender and gives her a tip, is like, can you just put water? I can't keep up with these guys.
Yeah.
Like I have to like roll with the dudes. And so if you're like, thinking that you have to like prove, and you're like, oh, well, I have to be liked by men, or I have to do it the way men do it. So how do you be more of you? Like how are you successful at the highest level as a woman? Like what should we be doing instead of like proving? And
I think the last generation, the women that paved the way for us, really did have to be masculine because they were fitting in rooms where there were only men.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. Most of the meetings I'm in corporations and big corporations, there's more women than men. But women have still not learned that it's okay to be both, right? Because we're all a mixture of feminine.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We are. And sometimes that masculine energy is needed. But if we're playing in a masculine space only, we're leaving our best tools as leaders and women outside the conference room door, because we're better listeners, we're better collaborators, we're able to bring diverse opinions together. We're not strong we're not strong authoritarian leaders. We're more comfortable with democratic leadership, right? Which is the way the world is going, as the diverse marketplace and these young people coming in who want to be heard and seen and all that. Women are very, very, very skilled at all of that, where men tend to be more black and white and strong leaders, like follow me, and uncomfortable with that collaboration most of the time. So we've got to step into our role of this juicy feminine leadership that the world needs so bad. And we got to stop being so afraid that it's going to be seen as intimidating.
I think that's really interesting, because the message is, and I think you have this somewhere in your website, that like, we believe that if we're assertive, then we're a bitch.
Yes.
Right. Or someone's going to say you're being so bitchy. But and I hate to be like anti-man. I'm not doing it. Right. But it's like, but men say shit and no one is like, if they say anything, like they're like, he's an asshole, but like he gets shit done.
Right. And I think the thing is like, let's stop talking about it in black and white, because so on one level, if you're not being authentic and you're trying to pretend to be strong and masculine, then you probably are being a bitch. And that's not going to work because you're not being you. But if you're strong and standing up in your power, in your voice, and you're all juicy, powerful, feminine, masculine self, and somebody calls you a bitch, that's their problem, not yours.
Totally. So I love that. So what?
I did my job. But the problem is it affects us because we're playing a role, or we're trying to be something different than ourselves, instead of allowing ourselves or permission to give ourselves the role of being exactly who we are. And, I say it all the time, is that I think, one of the things that I worked on with your help is turning my light up full power. Like I think every woman I've met, certainly every woman I work with, has moderated their light.
Yes.
To fit what they believe the world can handle of them. And that's why they're exhausted all the time. That's why they're not that happy. It's why they feel like incongruent with who they are. And when we turn up our light, actually we attract so many wonderful things. It's not the opposite of blinding people out. It's actually attracting more things and actually being at more ease and flow in our life, because we're finally living in congruence with our gifts and our talents. as well as who we are, and not apologizing for it anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because I was thinking of a group that I belonged to a few years ago, and the people that were sort of like my mentors were mostly men, and I was like, this isn't working. I'm super, I'm kind of frustrated, and their feedback, I realized this when you were saying it. I sort of was like, oh, well, they're these dudes, right? And they're probably right, because I wasn't understanding that, like, my light, like, I could in that moment have said, like, well, I kind of disagree, right? But I was like, no, be the good girl. Like, I don't want them to think like I'm not, like, I'm an annoying person, right? Or I'm being too, like, aggressive, or I'm complaining. And the way you said that, I was like, ooh, I was totally doing that. And it's so subtle, right? It's so subtle.
It's so subtle, and it's so automatic. It's fall in line, right? Don't be too much. And that is why a lot of women, like, I talked to an executive recruiter, and because I'm passionate about women power leading the world, because I think our world is messed up, and I think women are going to lead the way. And he's like, there are so many corporations that want women at the highest levels, and my biggest problem is convincing them they're ready for it.
Right.
Where men constantly apply to jobs that they're not sure they have all the capabilities for, but they'll figure it out because they trust themselves. And women feel this overbearing sense of like, I got to earn it. I haven't earned it. Or even sadder is, if I do that, it's going to cost me something on the other side. And I don't believe either of those things are true. And so it's stopping them from even applying or putting their hat in the ring, because they're not comfortable with their knowledge or power. Not every woman, but most women.
Yeah.
Women. And it's a real shame. And it doesn't have to be that way. And it's so fun to watch clients emerge, because people are like, this whole lean in or lean out or step back. It's like, it's like, depending on the person, because you should do what works for you. And I think at different stages in your life, both of us have gone through many generations of who we wanted to be and what impact we want to make and what that looks like. And women at different stages are going to make those decisions, but they shouldn't make them out of fear or lacking. They should make it out of power and say, nope, that's not what I want to do. And I have a woman recently that, like, took a job that was less than what she was doing before. And they were all like, well, why you're overqualified. She's like, yeah, but this is what I want. It's in the area I want. I don't want to commute. I want this kind of life. And she had to convince them. And she's so happy. And then there are other women who are like, I want that job, but I'm afraid. Right. It's going to blow out my life. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a client that I was working with who's in corporate. And when we started, she was like, there's too much work for my team. Like, they're cutting. Like, there's, I have to do it all. They fuck it up. Like, I have to do it.
Oh,
and right. And what's interesting is unpacking and unwinding that. And this has been like, maybe 3 months or whatever. And on the session the other day, she was like, because she figured out, like, she has to close her laptop and let her teammates sort of fail and not cover for them anymore. Anyway, and so the other day she's like, guess who got another resource on our team? Right? Because she stopped super fucking woman covering everyone. And she was like, they kind of suck. They're not stepping up. And this is what's happening. And I just love that story, because it's the thing that I want to talk about next is kind of part of that, which is that there's this validation, right, from being the go-to girl, right? Like, if I'm not, like, when you say, Marie, like, stop being that person, then it's like, well, then who am I? What do I do with my time? Like, will people still respect me? Am I going to get passed over? Like, I work a lot. And like you said, that's my validation, even though I complain about it literally all weekend. So if you're in that mode and you're like, you act like you love work, but work never loves you back. Work is your bad boyfriend. How do you start to break up without, blowing up your career, quitting or walking out? What's the steps you start to take?
Well, I think the steps you have to start to take is really looking at what is overwhelming you in your work first. I mean, because if you really got surgical and strategic about that, most of the stuff that I found with most of the women we work with, most of the stuff that is stressing them out is not the stuff they should be doing.
Love that.
And then they have more time. The opposite actually happens. They don't lose their job or aren't needed. They have more time for what they were actually hired to do, or value add, or be more strategic, or make decisions from a calm lake versus turbulent water all the time. And then they're also lifting up their people, their team, to say, I trust you to figure this out. I trust you to step up. And or you're not pulling your weight, and maybe this isn't the right job for you, because they're, not coaching people that way is not doing them a service. Coming in, and saving them all the time. And then then you're also like, I have an accountant client and partner, and she's like, they are now giving me the work with things that they know aren't right because they know I'll fix it. And it's easier for me to fix it. And I'm like, well, where's the learning in that? Then you're always going to fix it. And you want to move to another place. And, then the senior people in the organization look and say, this person doesn't know how to delegate. And they don't promote them. Because the teams or people that get promoted are the ones that have badass teams that are making things happen. And then that person can look even further on the horizon and see what's out there and plan for that and do the job they were hired to do instead of everybody else's. So I think you got to first start with like how you're tackling the job and how much of that is truly only you can do versus so many other people can do. And what happens is most women, like even like one of my friends, she is so talented. And she's like, but I'm not strategic. And I'm like, what does that really mean? Because I know what you do for a living. And she's like, what it really got down to when we were talking about it was that she doesn't believe she makes great decks or PowerPoint presentations.
Oh gosh, right.
I'm like, who the hell cares? There's like a gazillion people in this world that can do that. There's only like 4 people in the world that can put the information in the PowerPoint. And that makes you strategic, not making it look good. Like, give me a break. But I think that that's what women do, is they convince themselves they have to do all this shit. And then they also convince themselves they're horrible at things, and they're only focused on that when it turns out most of the time it's not even their job. So if you're not great at that, who cares? Go do something else.
Right. And are you supposed to be doing it? It's that book, Essentialism, I talk about it all the time, by Greg McKeown, I think is his name, where he looks at like, what is it that's really essential that you're doing, and what is non-essential, and should you be doing it, and should someone else be doing it?
Right.
And you're not, and I think what you said is so brilliant. Like, the things that got you to the level that you are, maybe like you said early on, you do have to like grind a little harder or prove yourself. But if you want to get to the next levels, right, and also have a life, those same skills or those same strategies where you just do it all, it's like you can't tread water that long. And then that's what happens, right? You get totally burned out.
You get burned out, you get looked over, you get rewarded with more work because you're that person. And, it's a self-fulfilling cycle, and yet you're like raging against, we talk about all the things, and we, like you said, I'm not man bashing at all. Like, you got to take responsibility for what's happening to you. It's happening to you. And for me, it was happening to me when I was working for a corporation. And then it was happening to me when I had my own company. And it was like, well, I can't really blame it on anybody else anymore. It's my company, And it's like, you got to look in the mirror and say, how true is that really? Like, it's most of the time it's not.
I think what you just said is so, because people are like, if, this sucks, if I just worked for myself, if I just had my own, and then you are right. And then you're doing it again. Right. And it's like, if you don't fix this shit, like, you literally will just keep learning the same lesson. It's very, 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 very painful.
Yeah. And as you're busier and busier, then you continue to do more, even more in high drive for other people, because it's just easier if you just do it, because you're just trying to get stuff done at that point. You're not even being strategic. You're not really even making value add stuff. You're just getting through your to-do list, and that's not what leaders should be.
Right. So when you looked at your own life and you were like, I have this company, I'm a single mom, I have like a really big family that I, love and spend time with and take care of, a lot of stuff. For you, when you let all of that kind of start to shift and created more of your power, tapped into more of your power, what started to happen? Like because when you work with clients, this magic happens. What started to happen for you in terms of like the other side of it that you just could never have imagined? Because when you're so steeped in the treading water, you're like, I have to wait till like my kids grow up, I make more money, till blah blah blah, then I'll stop. So what happens when you actually let go of the cliff and jump?
Well, I think the most exciting thing that happens is you start seeing possibilities in your life again, because you're not so buried under the responsibility or the burden of that responsibility. So you're like, what next? What else? What do I want to do? Ooh, that sounds fun, versus like struggling through and just surviving the day. So that, like, it opened up so many possibilities for me in my life, personal and professional, to say, what do I really like almost like playing in my life, like, ooh, what do I get to play with? Where I was just literally survival mode, kind of hamster wheel stuff. I think the other thing is there was a surprising amount, like 80-90%, where people were like, the things I stressed so much about that I started setting boundaries on, people were like, okay. It's just like not a big deal. I was like, son of a gun, why didn't I do this earlier? I mean, I tell the story of like, I had this 7:30 meeting, and I'm not a morning person. I'm like smart after 9:30. And it was a 7:30 meeting with a lot of important people. And I was a consultant, and I would struggle through this meeting. And one day I just like, experiment, which is something you taught me. Experiment, see if it works. And I was like, you know what? I can't do that 7:30 meeting anymore. And if they came back and said, Marie, it's the only time we can get everybody together, I would have figured it out, But I was like, I'm going to try it. And they're like, okay, what about 9? Like, oh my God, I've been doing this meeting for 6 months and miserable, convinced that I had to do it. That good girl, it's not really my meeting. And once I asked it, everyone was like, thank God, why are we doing this so early? Like, it was so funny, and that is on a very small scale what tends to happen. And then there is the third part where you start setting boundaries. So many people were benefiting from you not having any needs and doing everybody's job, that some people aren't going to be happy. And it is going to change your relationship with them, but it adjusts. It adjusts because then mutual respect comes in and they adjust. But at first they're going to be a little upset because, gosh, they actually have to do their own work.
Yes, and that's what happened to that one client that I was talking about. You know what I think is also fascinating? Because I was thinking that your daughter, when we met, how old was she? Like 5?
Oh gosh, maybe, yeah, probably 5.
Like she was like a little, like a lot, Yeah. And now it's like, almost 10 years later, right? And you are here to say, like, my daughter turned out amazing. I have a relationship. Like, I'm still connected to my family. Like, all the people that I let go of in that company to recreate something different. Nope, they didn't die, and like they're not living on the street. Like, I think it's just you're here to show people that, like, here it is almost 10 years later of like going down the first stone on the path.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is what happens. And so it's like, of course, your clients who follow that same path can really trust that, like, they're going to look back 10 years from now and they're going to be like, thank God I worked with Marie. That one day was the best choice I ever made.
Exactly. And so much, like I said, about possibility, like, I struggled with shutting down the old version of my company because I had long-term employees, and to a person, they're doing better, making more money. Not that I didn't pay well, but they're living their lives. They're doing, and they would have never had the guts to do it if I think that what I want, big change that impacts other people, when you have the courage to do it, it is always the right decision for the other people too. Because if it's right for you, it is starting this chain of events that's going to be right for them too. And you're just the brave one to do it first. And I think that's the ripple effect of what we do. When we're brave, that's what happens. And like, be able to like know this earlier? Like if I would have known this early on, damn it, what could have happened? I have a great life, but I mean, wow, what would that be? And like the little nuggets I'm teaching my daughter along the way to stand up for herself and use her voice. Oh my God, you would love this. One of her girlfriends was asking a boy on the thing, like, you haven't talked to me in a couple of days. Do you still like me? And she goes, oh my gosh, you cannot do that. That's so pick me energy.
I love that.
I'm 14.
I love it. The ripple effect.
Thank you, Marni. And but at those little places where she sees us stand up for ourselves and not take advantage. And like my mom was a good girl. She did everything for everybody. She was up until 3 a.m. sometimes. And I would always wonder why, because she was never asking for help, and
my mom too.
Yeah. And I learned that. So I feel like I'm teaching Adley that too. It's never perfect, but I'm teaching her to be courageous and not take on everybody's stuff. Like just, be the best version of you. You can coach, you can encourage, you can even hold their hand, but you can't go fix them.
Right. And I think the other thing that's really important for women who are listening to this, who are like, maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s, older, whatever. The thing that because my daughters are now in their mid to late 20s and they're not putting up with this shit. Like they step back. Like my daughter had a meet. She works for a big consulting company, and there was like a 7:30 meeting, and she was for the programmers in India or whatever. And she was like, "This doesn't work." And she literally did what you did, and everyone was like, "Oh, thank God that 7:30 thing was so crappy." You know what I mean? For all the people that were on the West Coast. So the thing is, like, if it's like these women that you're working with, they're like the sandwich generation, right? Like, because the young women that are coming in are just going to pass you up, not because they're young. It's not about your age. It's about you're doing it the old way.
It's their mindset. It is their mindset that they feel absolutely justified to have a life and be badasses at work. And they're going to figure it out, and they're going to make companies figure it out for them. And we're sitting there going, wait, what? And I will say that it is going to be a culture clash because, you do have to, if you have big jobs, like one of my clients said, my work didn't change. I mean, looking out, my work is still very demanding. I changed. Right. And that made all the difference. So it's not like we're asking people to not do their responsibilities.
Right. We're not quiet quitting or quiet hiring or any of that.
So angry.
Oh, so angry.
No, we're saying basically that we're going to start standing in our power and saying, this is appropriate. This isn't appropriate. This is my job. This is not my job. And let's go figure this out in a collaborative way. And like the opposite of good girl, as I'm saying, this good girl rebellion isn't mean girl. Right. It's not. It's being actually turning up your light and being you and giving yourself permission to be that in the world. And let's see what happens. Because it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be so amazing. I'm so excited for the impact that you're making and your mission and how you're going to change the world of work for women so they can have lives. And, I was thinking about this in terms of, how do you design a life that you don't want to retire from? How do you design a life that you don't want to, escape? Or you're like, oh my God, and that's what you're talking about, right? Is you're like, how can you turn your light up, love your life, make an impact, live your gift, and also like have this full, robust life. And I think it's a skill that we just missed. Like our moms didn't teach it to us.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I was just doing a Q4 thing. One of the questions I asked myself, which was sort of a newish question, was, what are the skills that I need to learn this quarter to achieve what I want to achieve? And I've never really thought about it that way. And I think that's a really great question for people who are listening, right? It's not that you're broken. It's not that you need to go to therapy for 10 years. It's like, wow, you're in an environment that changed. COVID changed it even more. You were raised up in it in a certain environment. And if you don't evolve, you're just going to be left living like the old version of yourself instead of what's possible. So you all need to find Marie and work with her, okay?
Yes. I'd love to help. I mean, I'm on a mission to change the way women experience success because it doesn't have to cost you everything.
Oh my God. Okay. So go to crazybusywomen.com for more Marie. So many opportunities to life check yourself here. I think that if you listen to this show again and you took some notes, you'd be like, am I doing this? Am I doing that? Could I change this? And what about that 7:30 meeting? Do an experiment. I want comments in the YouTube, like, I changed a meeting. We'll like create a movement of no more dark 30 meetings for corporate America. Ladies, Marie, thank you for being here. Ladies, you can always find more of me at Marni Battista _ on Instagram, Marni Battista at Facebook. Go to any of those places and say hi and tell us what you learned and what you are going to do as part of your next experiment. And life check yourself, ladies. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWDVIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Battista, and let's talk soon.